Hey there. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Today is March 11th, if I'm not mistaken. By the way, I heard myself last week, and this is going to dovetail nicely with the topic that we're speaking about. I heard myself and I felt I sounded like I was dead. So I'm going to try to come at you with a little more life today, a little more life and energy. We've got a really, really juicy topic today. We're going to be, well, I'm not even going to tell you what it's about, but like I said, it dovetails very nicely. You probably read what it's about a little bit in the blurb that I put. But March 11th, here we go. We've got spring training in full swing. We've changed the clocks. Some of you are still an hour behind. And if that wasn't enough, on the 19th, it's going to be the first day of spring. So we have a lot to get ready for, a lot to prepare for. We've had some crazy weather that might continue. March comes in like a lion, goes out like a lamb. April showers, bring May flowers, and all this other stuff that we tell ourselves. So we'll see how it plays out. But that's just weather, isn't it? Let's get into a super, super important topic today. And what I want to do something a little different. I want to start out giving you a scenario, something to think about. Let's suppose you are having a birthday party and you invite all the people that you care about the most. You invite your family, you invite your friends, and one of your friends shows up an hour late, and he or she is dirty. Like there's literally dirt on their face, and they're disheveled, and maybe their clothes are a little bit torn or what have. Just like they didn't care, apparently. They just showed up in any old outfit. I mean, would that be the first thought? Would you think immediately that this person just didn't care, there was something wrong with them, that they were having some kind of issues? Now, what if it turns out that the reason they were late is because they had stopped, someone was in need, and they had to help them change a tire or do something. They had to assist them so that they'd be healthier, or I'm sorry, so that they'd be safe. You see, the problem is that all too often we tend to make judgments. In fact, we are judgment machines. There was a writer named Walt Whitman, and he said, "Be curious, not judgmental." And I just think that's incredibly profound. Instead of just coming up with some explanation in our own heads and, making the person wrong in some way in our minds. And this is a scenario that maybe doesn't happen often, but I took it from my life. I knew somebody who that happened to. But it could happen. And how often do we do this? And maybe in not such a dramatic fashion, but how often are we looking and we are thinking that, the given person is not doing what they're supposed to be doing, or they're not a good person for some reason. But if we took a little bit of time to ask, hey, what's going on? Just like in that scenario, we would have found out what the story was, and then maybe our judgment would have been totally different. The conclusion might have been, oh my God, you did a very good thing for somebody. You did a good deed, and yet you showed up anyway. And you showed up knowing that you didn't look right, or as clean as you wanted to be. I just feel like this kind of scenario happens all the time. And let's understand something. Judgment is a good thing. Judgment has to do with making assessments, making sound decisions, using wisdom, often to, accurately depict how something is in order to make it better. That's judgment. But then there's being judgmental. Now, being judgmental has nothing to do with the actual scenario in most cases. Being judgmental has more to do with our own prejudices, our own histories, our own shortcomings, and projecting them onto others, or constantly comparing others or situations to how they should be ideally. Think about that. Like, it's a form of insanity. It's not accepting reality. It's just comparing and pointing out shortcomings when compared to a situation that doesn't really exist, right? How it should be. It's not how it is necessarily. It's how you think it should be in your own perfectionistic mind. And when I say you, by the way, I don't mean you, I mean the general you. I could say I just as easily, right? So, this is the problem with judgmentalism. And what's interesting is how some people, their least favorite thing in life is to be judged or is to be judged harshly, right? It's the least favorite. And yet, their very favorite thing to do is to judge others, it seems. To sit there in assessment. If you've ever had conversations with some people, it's all they do. All they do is talk about other people. And they probably fancy themselves so bright, with such a great ability to discern, right from wrong and pardon me, good from bad. I wonder why we enjoy judging so much and why we dislike being judged so much. I have a theory. My theory is it goes back to some really ancient stuff that's been conditioned into us. The worst thing if you were living in a small village back in the day is to be an outcast. And prior to being outcast, you would have been judged. It's the worst thing to be isolated, to be alone, to be sent away. There are stories about that in the Bible. And I think that the idea of sitting in front of a tribunal uh, to be judged, knowing that there are consequences or potential consequences, knowing that we can be outside of the good graces of our group or the elders or whoever's making the judgment, ourselves, knowing that we could be cast away. So I think there's some really, really ancient kind of stuff that goes on with the idea of being judged. It's why we hate it so much. But let's look at some of the practical implications of this. Because does this play out in the realm of weight loss? You better believe it does. Many of you have received a video from me. Those of you who are on the program, I've created some videos to help guide people through the program. And one of them is called The Biggest Challenge. Here's what happened basically is that I did a survey years ago to find out what the biggest challenge was for people on the program. And it turns out that the biggest challenge was comments from other people. And I say this on the video. I was surprised. I knew it was an issue. I've always known this. I didn't know it was the biggest issue, according to the survey that I did. So I created this video to help people get through that, to help people deal with comments from other people. Because the problem, and I'm talking about judgmental comments, right? Evaluative comments, right? Making a valid judgment about an individual or what they're doing. which can sound like a put down, right? And so I created this video, and the problem is not the judgment per se. The problem is not necessarily the comments. The problem is what we then do with it, how we internalize it. And do we become inhibited when we hear these things? Now, okay, let's get a little more specific. Those of you who've done our program, or let's extend it beyond that, who've done any program and made any attempts to lose weight, made other attempts to improve, did something that might have been considered outside the box. You may hear comments from other people on a program. It could be something like, oh, what is this crazy thing you're doing? Right? I mean, it's very loaded sometimes, these comments, or that'll never work, or my doctor says that blah, blah, blah. Who gives a shit? I'm sorry. What your doctor says. You know, I mean, we're talking about a person who's chosen a path, who they're trying to pursue it for a good reason, and yet other people will often make these comments. So, how do we navigate that? I mean, the first thing is we have to try not to become inhibited, not to go further into ourselves, become smaller. That's the tendency sometimes, right? On the other hand, we may not want to become too aggressive in our response. We may, but we may not. So the way that I recommend handling situations like this on a program, and maybe generally in life, is to first of all not cower, not get smaller, but secondly, to address the person and just tell them that you're doing something to improve yourself and ask for their support. See, this operates under the assumption that the person who's doing it has just lost their minds. They're not even aware of what they're doing. You know, they have their own deep-seated stuff, right? Maybe they feel guilty because they're not taking any actions. Maybe they think they know better, right? Maybe they're just one of these people who's so super conventional that anything outside the box is they can't handle it and they don't want anyone else doing it. So whatever the reason, it doesn't matter. What matters is the effect it has on you. So if you say to somebody, listen, I'm doing this thing to improve myself, I'm doing this detox program, and I'd like your support. Can I have your support? Most people will then have a realization. They'll be like, oh my God, of course. And then some people won't. And this is what I discuss in this particular video. If they don't, you might have to come at them in a different way. Maybe they deserve for you to attack them back. Don't kill them, don't attack them physically. But if they're attacking and they refuse to cease, then they might have to be put in their place. Because nothing's more important than you and your health and what you want to accomplish. Who cares what they think? If you have trouble with that, by the way, then you can speak to me about it. Now, this leads into something else that's interesting. How then do we handle judgmentalism in our lives in general? And the subsequent inhibition that can sometimes go along with it, which can affect us in our results. It can affect our enthusiasm about pursuing goals. It can affect whether we do it or not, or whether we say, screw it, I'm not continuing on this path. Look, other people are saying things. Well, a businessman wrote a book years ago. I think it was a businessman. And the name of the book was something to the effect of Asshole: How I Got Rich and Happy by Not Giving a Damn. Right. And it was, when I say asshole, again, I'm not addressing anyone purposely. That was the name of the book. It was Asshole: How I Got Rich and Happy, etc., etc. And the conclusion that he came to was, and by the way, I didn't read the book, and I want to now, but it was like you have to embrace being an asshole. And I'm not sure to what extent and to what degree he means that. I'm not sure if he means going on the attack and purposely being an asshole, or just being willing to be thought of as an asshole. And I would say that that's a good strategy, that's right on. Being willing to be thought of as being wrong or being a jerk or whatever it is that you might fear that people will think about you. Being weird, right? Again, it kind of comes up to that potential for being cast off, for being judged, and then having a subsequent consequence. If you're okay with that consequence, it doesn't really matter the judgment that's coming at you. It's just information, and it won't cause you to become inhibited. So I think that's where the author's coming from. I want to delve into it a little more. But one of the reasons that I'm having this discussion right now, I think it's important, is because I found myself in this situation just recently. Someone wrote something about me that was unflattering, and I felt unfairly judgmental. They didn't have all the information. And instead of being curious, instead of asking and finding out more where I was coming from and why I did what I did and blah, 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 it was just like I was wrong, I was bad, and blah, you know. So I was not happy about that. And that's on me. That's on me what I do with this information once I hear it. I felt it was unfair. I went into my thing. I did communicate that. And, that's, I guess, still pending. uh, there's the potential of escalation, isn't there? I'm not too concerned about it, right? I'm concerned about what I do and how I operate and what I'm able to achieve. And I think that's where the concern should be. So this subject about judgment or judgmentalism, this is a deep and very, very rich subject. I think and I sense that I'm going to go into it again more. I'd like to hear your feedback. This is important. Listen to this. Pass this along to other people. This is a really important topic. And I would say in today's world, more so than ever. If we look at the influence of social media, I mean, Twitter X this is what it's about. Everyone's just sharing their judgments, their opinions, regardless of validity. I mean, for some reason, nobody is inhibited when it comes to sharing an opinion that they really don't know if it has any merit or not. We're in an age where people don't feel the need to know anything before rendering an opinion. And there's the ability for that opinion to, be said into a bullhorn and be disseminated widely and fast, and it starts off this very often these wars. They call them flame wars, right? This is a good reason to not be on social media, but I think that it's multiplying this inherent sense that we have of not wanting to be judged. It's worse in this day and age. Now, there's an interesting phenomenon I think that's happened as a result, because as people have become more judgmental to the point of canceling others, right? Which is probably the modern version of casting them out. As this has occurred, look at some of our leaders. And now I'm making a political statement. I'm not trying to stand on a soapbox. I'm just trying to have you see the effects of this kind of extreme judgmentalism. Our leaders are very unapologetic people these days, it seems to me. Because who else could put up with it? Who else could put up with these constant attacks other than a narcissist who believes they're always right? Let's take this guy in Long Island, this congressperson, George Santos. I mean, he was someone who had no inhibitions, had no problem with just telling the most blatant lies. I love this guy. This guy's hilarious because he's the most blatant liar ever. Apparently, he played volleyball in college. He didn't. He was some kind of a wealthy hedge fund guy. He wasn't. I mean, just on and on. His parents were Holocaust survivors. They weren't, right? But I think to some degree we've created guys like this because they're the ones with enough balls to not care about the constant judgments and attacks. So it's a fascinating subject. My immediate concern more is how it affects my clients and potential clients, right? And making sure that people have the skills and have the tools to deal with it. Okay, but I would encourage you to listen to this again and to just think how it shows up in your life. This idea of judging and being judged and possibly becoming inhibited, and if it's affecting you and how you can deal with that. Okay, that's going to be it for this week. Have a great week, everyone. The sun is out temporarily. More rain is probably coming, but the weather's getting warmer. Opening day is coming soon. My audience doesn't care about this, but I do. So go Yankees. Take care.